My name is Velma, and at 32 years old, I stood outside my sister's upscale restaurant after being physically thrown out by security guards who grabbed my arms and dragged me to the pavement. The irony burned deeper than the humiliation as I clutched my designer handbag containing a $2 million purchase agreement for this very establishment. Through the pristine windows, I watched Iris laugh with her wealthy patrons, completely unaware that her failure of a sister was about to become her landlord. Before we dive into this story of family betrayal and sweet justice, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Are you someone who's also been underestimated by your own family? Hit that like button if you believe in karma, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories of underdogs who rise above. Trust me, you'll want to stick around to see how I turned years of humiliation into the ultimate comeback. Growing up in our household meant living in Iris's shadow, and she cast a long one. 3 years older than me, she was everything our parents Raymond and Gwendolyn had dreamed of in a daughter. Straight A's came effortlessly to her, while I struggled with undiagnosed dyslexia, spending hours trying to make sense of jumbled letters while she breezed through advanced placement classes. She won beauty pageants with her gleaming smile and perfect posture, while I tripped over my own feet at dance recitals. Our parents never let me forget the difference. Sunday dinners were performances where Iris starred and I served as the disappointing backdrop. Mom would parade Iris's latest achievements like trophies, while I pushed food around my plate invisible unless I did something wrong. Iris got promoted to regional manager, Mom would announce, then turn to me with that familiar look of disappointment. Velma's still at that diner, aren't you, dear? Well, someone has to serve coffee. Dad would grunt his agreement, never quite meeting my eyes, as if my mere existence offended his sensibilities. The Golden Pearl restaurant became Iris's crown jewel 5 years ago. She presented the business plan at Thanksgiving dinner with theatrical flair, spreading glossy projections across Mom's good tablecloth, while Theodore, her husband, nodded along like a trained seal. "This is our legacy," she declared, and our parents' eyes lit up with pride. They emptied their retirement accounts without hesitation, all $400,000 disappearing into Iris's dream. When that wasn't enough, they mortgaged the house they'd owned outright for 30 years. I watched this unfold with growing concern. My waitressing job at a downtown diner had taught me about restaurant economics, the brutal margins, and high failure rates. But more than that, I'd been quietly building something of my own. For 3 years, I'd been coding after my shifts, teaching myself programming through online courses and building apps for local businesses. My savings account held $50,000, every penny earned through 16-hour days of serving coffee and writing code. "I'd like to invest," I said quietly after Iris finished her presentation. The room fell silent. Then Theodore laughed a harsh bark that made my cheeks burn. "You want to invest? With what tip money?" Iris's smile was condescending as she patted my hand. "That's sweet, Velma, but we need serious investors, not your little waitressing fund. This is a real business, not one of your hobbies." The rejection stung, but not as much as what followed. Over the next months, I watched them pour everything into the Golden Pearl. Dad's pension, Mom's inheritance from Grandma, even Aunt Marilyn's life savings got swallowed by Iris's appetite for more. They bought the finest equipment, hired celebrity chefs, created marketing campaigns that painted Iris as a culinary visionary. The restaurant opened to great fanfare with Iris posing for Society magazines, while our parents stood proudly in the background. Meanwhile, my hobby was transforming into something substantial. Late nights coding had led to my first major client, a restaurant chain that needed inventory management software. That contract led to others. Within 2 years, I'd quietly built a tech consulting firm specializing in hospitality systems. But I kept it hidden, incorporating under a different name, living modestly, despite growing success. My family's dismissal had taught me the value of discretion. The first crack in Iris's perfect facade appeared last month at our cousin's wedding. The reception was held at the Golden Pearl naturally, with Iris playing gracious hostess. I arrived in a simple but elegant dress, hoping to blend into the background. Instead, Iris intercepted me at the entrance, her smile sharp as glass. "Velma, how unexpected. We're quite full with paying guests, but I suppose I can find you something in the kitchen." She meant it literally. While our extended family dined in the main room, I was seated at a small table near the dishwashing station. The staff shot me sympathetic looks as they rushed past with dirty plates. When I tried to join the cocktail hour, Iris appeared at my elbow. "Let's not embarrass ourselves," she hissed. "Some of us belong in the spotlight, others in the shadows. Know your place." The humiliation might have broken me once. Instead, I spent the evening observing the restaurant's operations with professional interest. The inefficiencies were staggering. Staff members stood idle while others rushed frantically. The kitchen layout created unnecessary bottlenecks. The inventory system was non-existent, with thousands of dollars of food spoiling in poorly organized coolers. Iris ruled through fear rather than leadership berating employees in view of customers. 2 weeks ago came the incident that changed everything. I'd arranged to bring potential business partners to the Golden Pearl for dinner. These weren't just any clients, but executives from a major hotel chain interested in my hospitality software suite. The deal would be worth millions. I made reservations under my company name, hoping to support my sister's business while impressing my clients. The moment we walked in, Iris's face transformed. She whispered urgently to the hostess, who suddenly couldn't find our reservation. When I insisted, Iris appeared, her professional smile never wavering as she addressed my companions. "I'm so sorry for the confusion. We do have a table available, though I should mention that this woman is a problematic relative of mine. I'll have security keep an eye on your table for your comfort." My clients exchanged uncertain glances as we were led to a table in the least desirable corner next to the restrooms. Throughout the meal, security guards hovered nearby, while Iris made periodic appearances, each time making subtle comments about my history of issues and her burden of difficult family members. When the check came, it was double the menu price. "Family discount doesn't apply to business meetings," the server explained apologetically. "Owner's orders." The partnership nearly died that night. Only my years of proven reliability saved it, though the executives asked pointed questions about my family situation. I deflected with professional grace while internally cataloging every slight, every deliberate humiliation. That night, I made a decision. The universe had been preparing me for something, and finally I understood what. The path from waitress to millionaire wasn't glamorous, despite what social media might suggest. It started in a cramped studio apartment where I'd code until my eyes burned and my fingers cramped. My family dismissed it as another failed hobby when I quit my diner job to focus on programming full-time. At least waitressing was honest work. Mom sighed when I told her about my first app development contract. "This computer thing seems so unstable." Stability came from 60-hour weeks and relentless focus. My first successful app helped small restaurants track inventory and reduce waste. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was solving problems for strangers that I couldn't fix for my own sister. Each client referral led to larger contracts. Within 18 months, I had enough steady business to hire contractors. By year 2, I incorporated properly, keeping the company name deliberately generic to avoid family attention. The real breakthrough came when a national restaurant chain discovered my software suite. They needed a comprehensive system linking inventory, staffing, and customer management. The contract was worth $2 million over 3 years. I celebrated alone in my apartment with takeout Chinese food and sparkling cider, having no one to share the victory with. My family remained convinced I was unemployed, living off credit cards and false pride. Building wealth required strategy beyond just earning. I reinvested everything, living like I still made minimum wage while my bank accounts grew. Every dollar went toward expanding the business or into carefully researched investments. I bought my first rental property through an LLC, then another. Within 4 years, my net worth crossed $10 million, yet I still drove the same aging Honda Civic that Iris mocked at family gatherings. The contrast between appearance and reality became my shield. While Iris flaunted her Mercedes bought with our parents' money and posted constantly about her restaurant success, I remained invisible on social media. My professional network knew me as a serious entrepreneur. My family knew me as a disappointment. The gap between those identities grew wider each year, and I found a strange comfort in it. My business connections in the hospitality industry eventually provided intelligence about the golden pearl that Iris would never have shared. Through discreet inquiries, I learned the glamorous facade hid serious problems. The restaurant was hemorrhaging money at an alarming rate. Premium ingredients and celebrity chef salaries ate through revenue. Worse, the books showed irregularities suggesting someone was skimming from the top. The investigation I quietly initiated revealed a darker picture. Theodore had developed a gambling addiction siphoning restaurant funds to cover growing debts. Iris, meanwhile, paid herself an executive salary that would shame Fortune 500 CEOs while refusing to pay suppliers on time. Staff turnover was astronomical due to late paychecks and toxic management. 3 months of rent remained unpaid, and the building owner had begun eviction proceedings. Health department reports added another layer of concern. Violations accumulated faster than they could be addressed. Improper food storage, inadequate sanitation, pest control issues that stemmed from deferred maintenance. The golden pearl teetered on the edge of forced closure. Yet Iris continued projecting success, borrowing more from our parents to maintain appearances. The opportunity came through my network when the building owner reached out to my commercial real estate contact. He needed a buyer quickly, someone with cash who could close fast. The property included not just the restaurant space, but 3 floors of apartments above and the adjacent retail space. The asking price was $4 million, but desperation made him flexible. More interesting was his willingness to include the restaurant business itself in the deal for the right price. I spent weeks analyzing the opportunity from every angle. The building had good bones and excellent location despite deferred maintenance. The restaurant, stripped of ego and mismanagement, could be profitable. The apartments provided steady rental income. But beyond financial considerations lay a deeper motivation. This wasn't just about acquiring property. It was about justice, accountability, and perhaps even redemption. The plan crystallized slowly. I would buy everything through my holding company, maintaining anonymity until the perfect moment. First, I needed to understand the full scope of the disaster. My forensic accountant discovered the true extent of the damage during due diligence. $800,000 in debts between suppliers, staff wages, and taxes. Our parents' second mortgage payments were 3 months behind. Aunt Marilyn's investment had vanished into operating expenses with no hope of return. Vincent, my business partner and closest friend, questioned my motivations during our strategy sessions. "This seems personal," he observed, reviewing the financials. "The numbers work, but barely. You could find better investments." I acknowledged the truth while maintaining focus on the business case. Yes, it was personal, but that didn't make it wrong. Sometimes the universe provides opportunities for both profit and justice. My lawyer, Malcolm, structured the deal carefully. Multiple layers of corporations obscured the ultimate ownership. The purchase would include assuming existing debts, which actually lowered the cash price to $2 million. The seller, eager to escape liability, agreed to generous terms, including immediate transfer and a waiver of due diligence periods. He had no idea he was selling to the family disgrace his tenant regularly mocked. 2 days before my mother's 70th birthday party, I signed the papers in Malcolm's office. The weight of ownership felt different than my other properties. This wasn't just an investment, but a reckoning years in the making. As I held the deed, I thought about every dismissive comment, every public humiliation, every time my success was diminished because it didn't match their narrow definition of achievement. The birthday party would be held at the Golden Pearl naturally. Iris had made it clear through family channels that everyone was invited except me. The slight no longer stung. Instead, it presented an opportunity. I had Chelsea, one of the restaurant servers who'd become a friend, secretly keeping me informed about the preparations. Iris planned to use the event to court new investors, painting herself as the successful daughter while lamenting her challenging sister. I prepared carefully for what was to come, not with anger or bitterness, but with the calm precision of a chess player who could see 12 moves ahead. Every piece was positioned perfectly. The ownership transfer was complete, but not yet public. The forensic audit revealed criminal activity. The staff owed back wages would soon learn their savior's identity, and Iris, in her arrogance, remained completely unaware that her kingdom had already fallen. The morning of Mom's 70th birthday arrived crisp and clear, one of those perfect autumn days that made everything seem possible. I selected my outfit carefully, a simple but expensive sheath dress that whispered rather than shouted its quality. The pearl necklace I'd chosen for Mom rested in its velvet box, $15,000 of lustrous perfection that I'd selected because she'd always admired Grace Kelly's elegance. I knew I wasn't invited to the party, but I went anyway, driven by equal parts hope and strategy. The Golden Pearl bustled with activity when I arrived at 4 o'clock. Through the windows, I could see the extended family gathering cousins I hadn't spoken to in years, mingling with aunts and uncles who'd written me off as the family failure. Iris held court in a designer gown that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her laugh carrying through the glass as she gestured dramatically at some story she was telling. I entered quietly, hoping to blend into the crowd long enough to wish Mom happy birthday. The hostess, a new girl who didn't know the family. Dynamics smiled warmly and began leading me toward the main dining room. We made it 3 steps before Iris materialized her radar for my presence, apparently finely tuned. Her smile remained fixed for the benefit of watching relatives, but her eyes were arctic. "Some people just can't take a hint," she announced loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. "But I suppose we should expect this kind of behavior by now." She turned to the hostess with exaggerated patience. "This is my sister Velma. She wasn't invited, but she has a history of creating scenes at family events. We'll need to find her alternative seating arrangements." The alternative arrangement was a wobbly table crammed next to the kitchen entrance, so close to the swinging doors that servers had to squeeze past to enter and exit. The chair had a broken leg that required a folded napkin to stabilize. From this vantage point, I could see the main party, but remained firmly excluded from it. Relatives glanced my way with mixtures of pity and relief that they weren't the family disappointment. I ordered water and waited, watching the choreographed performance of Iris's success. She'd arranged for photographers to capture every moment, positioning our parents prominently as she gave a toast about family support and believing in dreams. "5 years ago I had a vision," she proclaimed, champagne flute raised high. "And unlike some people who drift through life without purpose, I made that vision reality through hard work and determination." The pointed look in my direction wasn't subtle. Neither was Theodore's smirk as he added his own commentary. "Success runs in families, but sometimes genes skip a generation. Or, in some cases, they skip a sibling entirely." The laughter that followed felt like tiny knives. Dad actually chuckled while Mom studied her champagne with sudden intensity. When the formal toasts ended and people began mingling, I approached Mom with her gift. She stood near the dessert table, accepting birthday wishes from cousins who hadn't visited in years but showed up for free fine dining. Her face went through several expressions when she saw me approaching, settling on resigned disappointment. "Happy birthday, Mom," I said quietly, offering the wrapped box. "I wanted to give you something special for 70 years of being amazing." The words came out more vulnerable than intended, that little girl inside still seeking approval despite everything. For a moment, her expression softened, and I thought maybe this time would be different. Iris swooped in before Mom could respond, snatching the gift with theatrical disgust. "Really, Velma? You're going to embarrass Mom with your discount store jewelry on her special day." She didn't even open the box, just thrust it back at me hard enough that I stumbled backward. "Mom doesn't need your knockoff gifts. She has real jewelry from her successful daughter." The moment stretched endlessly as the entire party seemed to pause and watch. My cheeks burned, but I kept my voice steady. "Maybe Mom should decide for herself what she wants." The reasonable suggestion triggered something in Iris. Her careful mask slipped, revealing the spite underneath. "Security!" she called sharply. "We need assistance at the kitchen entrance. We have a disruption." Two large men appeared within seconds, clearly briefed on the possibility of my arrival. Iris pointed at me like I was trash to be removed. "Please escort my sister out. She's disrupting our paying customers and making my mother's birthday uncomfortable." Mom said nothing, just turned away as the security guards flanked me. Dad was deep in conversation with Uncle George, conveniently unable to see what was happening. "Don't make this difficult," one guard muttered as they gripped my arms. I didn't resist as they marched me through the restaurant past tables of strangers who watched the spectacle with fascination. Some probably assumed I was drunk or had caused a scene. The reality was worse. I was being thrown out for the crime of trying to give my mother a birthday present. They deposited me on the sidewalk with unnecessary force, one guard giving me a small shove that made me stumble in my heels. Through the window, I could see the party resuming as if nothing had happened. Iris was already back to playing hostess, gesturing for the photographer to capture her comforting our mother. The narrative was being written in real time, that poor Iris dealing with her troubled sister's intrusions. I stood there for several minutes, gift box still clutched in my hands, watching my family celebrate without me. Chelsea appeared at the service entrance, her face full of sympathy and anger. "I recorded everything on my phone," she whispered urgently. "This is beyond cruel, even for her. Are you okay?" I assured her I was fine, though we both knew it was a lie. She hugged me quickly before rushing back inside. Just as I turned to leave, Iris emerged from the main entrance. Her party smile had vanished, replaced by naked contempt. "You need to understand something," she said, closing the distance between us. "You're an embarrassment to this family. While I built this empire from nothing, you're still playing with computers like a child. Stop trying to insert yourself where you don't belong." "I just wanted to wish Mom happy birthday," I said quietly. "Is that really so threatening to you?" Her laugh was sharp and ugly. "Everything about you is pathetic. Your cheap clothes, your worthless job, your desperate need for attention. I built this restaurant into the city's premier dining destination while you accomplished nothing." "Interesting definition of building," I replied, finding steel in my spine. "Using other people's money, paying yourself, instead of staff letting Theodore gamble away the profits. Very entrepreneurial." Her face went white, then red. "How dare you spread lies about my business? You know nothing about success because you've never achieved anything." She stepped closer, lowering her voice to a hiss. "Don't come back here. Ever. You're banned from my restaurant. If you show up again, I'll have you arrested for trespassing. This is my domain, my success, my life. You're just a sad little footnote that nobody will remember." "We'll see about that," I said calmly, meeting her gaze steadily. Something in my expression must have unsettled her because she took a step back. "Is that a threat from you, please? What could you possibly do to me? You're nobody, Velma. You've always been nobody, and you'll die nobody." I smiled, then thinking of the papers in my safe at home. "Sometimes being nobody has advantages. You should remember that." I turned and walked away with as much dignity as I could manage in heels on uneven pavement. Behind me, I heard her derisive laughter before the restaurant door closed with finality. At my car, I sat for a moment processing everything. The humiliation stung, but underneath lay something else. Clarity. Resolve. Iris had drawn clear battle lines banning me from the restaurant she considered her kingdom. She had no idea she'd just banished me from my own property. The irony was delicious, but the pain of rejection still ached beneath the satisfaction. I drove home slowly, replaying every moment. The security footage Chelsea captured would prove valuable, documenting the cruelty for anyone who might question my eventual actions. But more than evidence, I had confirmation that my family would never see me as anything but a disappointment unless forced to acknowledge reality. That night, I called Malcolm to confirm the final details. Monday morning, we would begin Phase 2. The anonymous new ownership would start making changes, setting the stage for the ultimate revelation. Iris thought she'd won by throwing me out. She couldn't imagine that she'd actually lit the fuse on her own destruction. The nobody sister she'd dismissed and discarded was about to teach her the true meaning of power. Monday morning arrived with unusual warmth for October, the kind of false summer that made everything feel slightly off balance. I sat in my home office at 5:30 reviewing the ownership documents one final time while coffee cooled in my favorite mug. The paperwork was perfect, every detail meticulously handled by Malcolm and his team. By 6 o'clock, the Golden Pearl had officially changed hands, though no one at the restaurant would know for several more hours. Malcolm met me at his downtown office at 7 sharp. We'd rehearsed this carefully, each step designed for maximum strategic impact. He would present himself as the representative of a hospitality investment group maintaining the fiction until the perfect moment. I remained behind the scenes, pulling strings like a conductor, orchestrating a particularly satisfying symphony of justice. The first call went to the restaurant's main supplier at 8 o'clock. They'd been owed $40,000 for 3 months, repeatedly stonewalled by Iris's excuses. Malcolm identified himself as representing the new ownership and authorized immediate payment of all outstanding invoices. The shocked silence on the other end was followed by effusive gratitude and promises of restored service. Similar calls followed to other vendors, each debt settled with swift efficiency. By 9 o'clock, word was spreading through the restaurant industry grapevine that the Golden Pearl was under new management. Chelsea texted me updates from inside the restaurant as confusion mounted. Suppliers who'd been threatening legal action were suddenly calling to confirm renewed partnerships. The produce delivery that Iris had been begging for arrived unexpectedly paid in full. Staff members whispered nervously, wondering what was happening. The forensic accounting report made for fascinating reading. Iris had been creative with the books coding personal expenses as business costs. The Mercedes lease ran through the restaurant. Her designer clothing became uniforms. Theodore's gambling debts were hidden as consulting fees to shell companies. Over $300,000 had been systematically drained while employees went unpaid and vendors were stiffed. At 10 o'clock, Malcolm authorized the payroll company to process all back wages immediately. 2 months of unpaid salaries hit bank accounts within hours. Chelsea reported tearful staff members checking their phones in disbelief as notifications appeared. Some had been facing eviction choosing between gas and groceries, all while Iris complained about their lack of dedication from the comfort of her luxury car. The health department received an interesting anonymous tip around 11 complete with documentation of violations and evidence of attempts to bribe inspectors. Not from me directly, of course, but from a concerned citizen who happened to have detailed knowledge of the restaurant's operations. An emergency inspection was scheduled for the following day, which would normally send Iris into panic mode. Instead, work crews arrived at noon to address every violation. New refrigeration units were installed within hours. The pest control company performed comprehensive treatment. Deep cleaning crews attacked years of neglected maintenance, while confused staff watched thousands of dollars of improvements happen without explanation. Iris, according to Chelsea, was frantically calling the building owner's old number, getting only a message that the property was under new management. Vincent stopped by my house that afternoon to review our strategy. "You're enjoying this too much," he observed, watching me track the chaos through various reports. "Maybe," I admitted, "but after years of being dismissed and humiliated, a little satisfaction seems justified." He laughed, understanding the deeper motivation. Vincent had seen too many family businesses destroyed by ego and greed to judge my methods. The meeting was scheduled for Wednesday evening, giving Iris 2 days to marinate in uncertainty. Malcolm sent the formal invitation through the restaurant's business email, requesting the presence of ownership and management to discuss the transition. The tone was professional but firm, making clear that attendance wasn't optional. Iris responded within minutes, her email dripping with barely concealed panic beneath corporate speak. Tuesday's health inspection went surprisingly well, considering the restaurant had been facing closure just days before. The inspector, initially skeptical, found every violation addressed and systems in place to prevent recurrence. His report noted remarkable improvement and cleared the restaurant for continued operation. Iris took credit, of course, telling staff she'd arranged everything despite having no idea where the money came from. I spent Tuesday evening reviewing security footage Chelsea had accumulated over the past months. The clips painted a devastating picture of Iris's management style, berating servers until they cried, threatening to fire single mothers for requesting schedule accommodation, denying breaks during 12-hour shifts, pocketing tips meant for staff. Each instance was carefully cataloged and time-stamped, ready for presentation. The financial audit revealed more disturbing patterns. Our parents' investment had disappeared within the first year spent on vanity renovations and marketing campaigns that promoted Iris rather than the restaurant. Aunt Marilyn's $50,000 had lasted 3 months. The second mortgage on our childhood home was funding Iris's lifestyle while the restaurant circled the drain. Every family member who'd trusted her had been systematically betrayed. Wednesday morning, I dressed with particular care. The black suit was impeccably tailored, the kind of quiet luxury that whispered rather than shouted. Pearl earrings that matched the necklace still sitting in my safe, rejected by my mother, but worn as armor. My hair pulled back in a style that meant business. Today wasn't about being the invisible sister. Today was about revealing exactly who I'd become. Malcolm called at noon to confirm everything was arranged. The restaurant would close early for the meeting with all staff required to attend. He'd hired security to ensure order and prevent any attempts at violence or destruction. A court reporter would document everything for legal purposes. The media had been discreetly alerted to a potential story about restaurant industry fraud, though details remained vague. Chelsea texted updates throughout the day. Iris was oscillating between manic confidence and barely controlled panic. She'd summoned our parents for support, spinning tales of corporate raiders trying to steal her successful business. Theodore appeared briefly, then disappeared after a whispered argument about missing money. The staff pretended to work while secretly celebrating their paid wages and gossiping about the mysterious benefactor. By 4 o'clock, word had spread through our extended family that something major was happening at the Golden Pearl. Cousins who'd witnessed my humiliation at Mom's party suddenly remembered they had gift cards to use. Aunts who hadn't spoken to me in years called my old number fishing for information. The family WhatsApp group exploded with speculation and concern for poor Iris facing corporate aggression. I sat in my car outside the restaurant at 5:30, watching through tinted windows as people gathered. The dining room had been cleared, chairs arranged theater-style, facing a presentation screen. Iris stood at the entrance in her most expensive dress, greeting arrivals like a queen holding court. Our parents flanked her. Dad uncomfortable in his dated suit, Mom clutching her purse like a shield. The atmosphere vibrated with tension and anticipation. At exactly 6 o'clock, Malcolm emerged from a town car looking every inch the corporate attorney. He carried a leather portfolio and tablet, his expression professionally neutral. I watched him enter the restaurant, noting how Iris's confident smile faltered slightly at his imposing presence. She'd expected someone she could charm or bully. Malcolm was neither susceptible to her tactics nor impressed by her performance. Inside, according to the live feed Chelsea managed to stream to my phone, Malcolm took his position at the front of the room. He introduced himself simply as representing the new ownership group that had acquired both the building and assumed the restaurant's debts. The revelation that the building had been sold sent visible shockwaves through the assembled crowd. Iris's face cycled through denial, anger, and fear in rapid succession. "That's impossible," she declared loudly. "I have a lease. You can't just buy the building and kick us out." Malcolm smiled thinly. "You're correct that you have a lease. However, that lease contains specific performance clauses that you've consistently violated. More importantly, the previous owner included the restaurant business itself in the sale to settle outstanding debts. We now own everything, including your operating licenses." The room erupted in chaos. Iris shrieked about lawyers and lawsuits while our parents demanded explanations. Staff members exchanged glances of combined hope and terror. Malcolm remained calm, waiting for the noise to subside. When it didn't, he simply began presenting evidence on the screen. Financial records, health violations, wage theft documentation. The room gradually fell silent as the scope of mismanagement became undeniable. The new ownership has already invested substantially in addressing these issues, Malcolm continued. All vendor debts have been satisfied. Staff wages are current. Health violations have been remediated. The question now becomes what to do with current management that created this situation. He paused dramatically, letting the implications sink in. Iris had gone pale, her designer confidence crumbling. Theodore chose that moment to slink into the room, clearly hoping to go unnoticed. Malcolm's laser focus found him immediately. "Mr. Theodore Richardson, how convenient. We have several questions about consulting fees paid to companies that seem to exist only on paper. Perhaps you could elaborate on the nature of these services." Theodore's expression made it clear he'd rather be anywhere else as evidence of his embezzlement filled the screen. The presentation continued relentlessly. Each slide revealed new depths of deception and mismanagement. Our parents' faces reflected growing horror as they realized their retirement savings hadn't funded a successful business, but rather an elaborate fraud. Aunt Marilyn, who'd arrived late, gasped audibly when she saw how her investment had been categorized as a personal loan to Iris rather than business capital. "This brings us to the matter of criminal charges." Malcolm said, his tone conversational despite the bomb he'd just dropped. "Embezzlement, tax fraud, wage theft, these carry serious penalties. The new ownership is prepared to offer an alternative to prosecution depending on the cooperation received." He looked directly at Iris, who seemed to have shrunk into herself. "First, however, I should introduce you to the person who now controls your fate." He pressed a button on his remote. The screen changed to display corporate ownership documents. At the top in bold letters was the name of my holding company. Below that, listed as sole proprietor and CEO, was my name, Velma Richardson, the nobody sister who'd been thrown out of this very restaurant just days ago. "No." Iris whispered the word, barely audible, then louder. "No, this is impossible. She's nobody. She's nothing. She can't afford this." Malcolm smiled genuinely for the first time. "I believe Ms. Richardson would like to address that misconception personally." He gestured toward the entrance where I stood, having entered during the chaos. Every head in the room turned toward me. I walked forward slowly, letting the silence build. My heels clicked authoritatively on the floor I now owned. The suit that had seemed like armor earlier now felt like royal robes. Years of dismissal, mockery, and humiliation had led to this moment. I reached the front of the room and turned to face my audience, seeing shock, disbelief, and dawning recognition on familiar faces. "Hello, Iris," I said calmly, producing the ownership documents from my portfolio. "I believe you had me thrown out of my restaurant last week. Shall we discuss that?" The silence that followed my revelation could have been bottled and sold as pure shock. Iris's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, while our parents sat frozen, their minds clearly struggling to reconcile the daughter they'd dismissed with the woman standing before them. I let the moment stretch, savoring the weight of truth, finally crushing years of carefully maintained delusions. "This is a sick joke." Iris finally managed her voice, climbing toward hysteria. "You're a waitress. You live in a studio apartment. You can't even afford a decent car." Each statement came out more desperate than the last, as if saying them loudly enough might make them true again. Theodore, meanwhile, was edging toward the exit, only to find his path blocked by the security Malcolm had thoughtfully provided. I smiled, the expression feeling foreign on my face after years of accepting their contempt. "Actually, I haven't been a waitress for 6 years. The studio apartment was sold 4 years ago when I bought my house in Westmont. And the Honda, I keep it because it reminds me where I came from. Humility, Iris. You should try it sometime." "This is impossible!" she shrieked, turning to our parents for support. Tell everyone how she's lying." "She's nobody. She's always been nobody." Mom's face had gone pale, her hands trembling as she clutched Dad's arm. He stared at me like I was a stranger, which in many ways I was. The daughter he'd ignored had become someone beyond his comprehension. Malcolm stepped forward with perfect timing, pulling up financial records on the screen. "Ms. Richardson's technology company Vertex Solutions has been quite successful. She's actually been recognized by several industry publications for her innovative hospitality management systems. Fortune named her one of the top entrepreneurs under 40 to watch, but she maintained a low profile, particularly around family." "You've been lying to us." Mom's voice broke through the chaos, small and hurt. "All these years pretending to struggle." The accusation might have stung if it weren't so perfectly backwards. "I never lied," I replied evenly. "You never asked. You assumed I was failing because that fit your narrative. Every family gathering you compared me to Iris without ever wondering what I was actually doing. Because you were nobody." Iris interjected, her composure completely shattered. "You were the slow one, the problem child, the embarrassment I built this empire while you played with computers." She gestured wildly around the restaurant. "This is success. This is achievement, not hiding behind screens pretending to be important. Your empire is built on fraud." I responded, my voice cutting through her hysteria. "Would you like to see the real numbers?" I nodded to Malcolm, who obligingly displayed the forensic accounting results. 300,000 embezzled, 800,000 in debts, 2 months of unpaid wages while you drove a car bought with restaurant funds. Our parents' retirement gone, their house mortgaged, Aunt Marilyn's savings vanished. Gasps echoed around the room as staff members saw the full scope for the first time. Several pulled out phones recording the confrontation. Let them. The truth needed witnesses. Aunt Marilyn stood up, her face flushed with anger. "You told me the investment was secured. You showed me projections. You promised returns." She turned on my parents. "You vouched for her, said she was a brilliant businesswoman." "She is..." Dad finally found his voice, though it lacked conviction. "There must be some mistake. Iris would never..." He trailed off as Malcolm presented receipt after receipt showing personal purchases coded as business expenses. Designer clothing, jewelry, spa treatments, vacations, all while claiming the restaurant couldn't afford to pay its workers. "The mistakes," I said quietly, "were mine, thinking family meant something, believing that blood created obligations. watching you pour everything into someone who saw you as ATMs rather than parents. I looked at Iris. You didn't just steal money, you stole their security, their dignity, their future. For what Instagram photos and society page mentions, Iris launched herself at me, her designer heels catching on the carpet. Security intercepted her before she made contact, but her screaming continued. You jealous witch! You've always hated me, always tried to undermine me. This is all your fault. You turned them against me. You planted evidence. You're destroying everything I built. Everything you built? I laughed, surprising myself with the sound. You mean everything you stole? Let's talk about what you actually built, shall we? I gestured to the room. A culture of fear where employees work unpaid, a reputation for stiffing vendors, health violations that could have killed someone, debt that would have seen mom and dad homeless. That's your legacy. Theodore finally spoke his usual swagger, replaced by naked fear. We can work this out. Families stick together, right? No need for legal issues. I'm sure there were some accounting errors, misunderstandings. We can make it right. His eyes darted between exits, calculating escape routes. The gambling debts had clearly taught him to recognize when the house had won. Accounting errors, I repeated thoughtfully. Is that what we're calling theft now? Malcolm, could you show the consulting fee documentation? The screen filled with evidence of Theodore's shell company's fake invoices and money transfers to offshore accounts. 50,000 here, 30,000 there. It adds up. Tell me, Theodore, which casino benefited most from your consulting expertise. The room stirred as people began choosing sides. Some staff members moved subtly closer to me, recognizing where power now resided. Others, particularly those who'd benefited from Iris's favoritism, clustered near her. Our parents remained frozen in place, apparently unable to process their world inverting. The golden child had become tarnished while the failure had been revealed as gold. You can't do this, Iris said, her voice dropping to something more dangerous than screaming. I know things about you, how you were always jealous, always plotting. I'll tell everyone how you sabotaged me, how you've been planning this for years like some psychotic vendetta. Nobody will work with you when they know what you really are. What I really am, I mused, is someone who built a legitimate business while you built a house of cards. Someone who earned every penny while you stole from family. Someone who tried to help and was rejected because my money wasn't good enough for your empire. I pulled out my phone, showing bank records. Remember this $50,000 I offered to invest? You laughed at me. Because it was pathetic, she spat. 50,000 of tip money I needed real investors, not charity cases playing businesswoman. Even now, faced with evidence of my success, she couldn't stop diminishing me. The conditioning ran too deep, the need to be superior too ingrained. It almost made me pity her. Almost. Malcolm cleared his throat, drawing attention back to practical matters. The immediate question is how to proceed. Criminal charges are warranted given the evidence. However, Ms. Richardson is willing to consider alternatives that might preserve some dignity for the family. He looked meaningfully at Iris. Assuming cooperation and acknowledgement of wrongdoing. I've done nothing wrong, Iris declared. Everything I did was for the business. You can't prove otherwise. As if on cue, Malcolm played security footage of Iris pocketing cash from the register, then marking it as a shortage on staff reports. Another clip showed her berating a pregnant server for requesting lighter duties. A third caught her taking tips meant for waitstaff. The assembled crowd watched in horrified fascination as clip after clip destroyed any remaining illusions about Iris's management. Several employees were crying, whether from validation or relived trauma, I couldn't tell. Chelsea stood near the back, her phone still recording a grim satisfaction on her face. She'd warned me some of the footage was hard to watch. She'd understated it. Enough, Mom whispered the word, barely audible, but somehow cutting through everything. Please, enough. She looked between Iris and me, tears streaming down her face. "How did we get here? How did my daughters—" She couldn't finish, covering her face with shaking hands. Dad put an awkward arm around her, looking lost. "We got here," I said gently, "because you chose favorites, because you decided one daughter deserved everything while the other deserved nothing. Because you never questioned why Iris needed hundreds of thousands while I never asked for anything. Because it was easier to believe I was a failure than to wonder why I stopped sharing my life with you." "You were difficult!" Dad burst out, surprising everyone. "Always questioning, always different. Iris was easy. She fit what we expected, what we understood. You were—" He struggled for words. "You were complicated. It was easier to focus on the daughter who made sense." The honesty was brutal, but somehow refreshing after years of pretense. "I was dyslexic," I corrected. "Undiagnosed because you didn't want to admit your daughter might need help. Different because I saw through the performance. Complicated because I refused to pretend Iris's cruelty was love." I turned to face him fully. "You chose easy over right. Now you're facing the consequences." Iris, realizing she was losing even our parents' blind support, made one last desperate play. "If you destroy me, you destroy them too. They'll lose everything. The house, their savings, everything. Is your revenge worth making your own parents homeless? Are you really that heartless?" She smiled triumphantly, thinking she'd found leverage. I let her savor the moment before responding. "Actually, I paid off the second mortgage last week. Anonymously, of course. The house is safe. As for their retirement, that's going to take more work, but I've already started a fund to replace what you stole. Because unlike you, I understand that family means taking care of people, not taking from them." The revelation hit like a physical blow. Mom gasped. Dad's jaw dropped, and Iris went white. "You... what? When? How did you even know?" The questions tumbled out as she realized I'd been 3 steps ahead the entire time. Her trump card was worthless, already countered before she knew the game had begun. "I've known everything for months," I admitted. "Every debt, every lie, every theft. I could have acted sooner, but I wanted to give you chances to do the right thing. Pay your workers. Settle with vendors. Stop stealing from the family that sacrificed everything for you. You chose differently every single time." "So what now?" Theodore demanded, apparently realizing escape was impossible. "You've made your point. You've humiliated us. What do you want?" "Money and apology. What's it going to take to make this go away?" He still didn't understand. This wasn't about making anything go away. This was about making things right. I looked around the room at the assembled faces. Staff who'd suffered, family who'd been deceived, my parents who'd enabled it all, and Iris, who even now was probably scheming ways to spin this as my fault. The next words would determine not just her fate, but the future of everyone connected to this restaurant. "What happens next," I said clearly, "depends entirely on you." The power dynamic in the room had shifted completely, like watching gravity reverse. Where Iris once commanded attention through sheer force of personality and perceived success, now she stood diminished, her designer armor unable to protect her from truth's assault. I stood where she used to, but I felt no triumph, only the weight of decisions that would affect everyone present. "Here's what's going to happen," I began, my voice carrying the authority of someone who'd spent years preparing for this moment. "Iris, you have 2 choices. Option 1, I file criminal charges. The evidence is overwhelming. Embezzlement, fraud, wage theft, tax evasion. You're looking at serious prison time. The media will feast on the story of a restaurant owner who stole from her own family while her workers went unpaid." Iris swayed on her feet, gripping the nearest chair for support. The designer dress that had seemed like armor now looked like a costume on a defeated actor. "You wouldn't," she whispered. "This scandal would destroy Mom and Dad. You wouldn't hurt them just to get at me." Even now, she was trying to use our parents as shields. Which brings us to option 2. I continued ignoring her manipulation. You work. Actually work, not pretend while others carry you. You start as a server minimum wage plus tips. Every penny beyond basic living expenses goes toward restitution. You pay back every worker, every vendor, every family member you stole from. The forensic accountant estimates it'll take 2 years if you're diligent. A server. The word came out strangled. You want me to wait tables in my own restaurant? The possessiveness was reflexive reality, not yet fully processed. Several staff members made sounds somewhere between satisfaction and disbelief. The woman who'd treated them as disposable would now walk in their shoes. Not your restaurant, I corrected firmly. Mine. You'll work under Chelsea, who I'm promoting to general manager effective immediately. You'll follow every rule, every policy, every directive. No special treatment, no shortcuts, no excuses. You'll learn what it actually takes to run a restaurant from the ground up. Chelsea's gasp was audible, her eyes widening with shock. What? General manager? But I'm just a server. The imposter syndrome was familiar, that voice saying you don't deserve success. I'd heard it in my own head for years before learning to silence it with accomplishment. You're a server who kept this place running while management played dress-up, I told her. You're the one staff comes to with problems, the one who knows every regular's order and every supplier's quirks, the one who documented wrongdoing because you cared about justice. That's exactly who should be managing. Theodore tried to edge toward the door again, but Malcolm's voice stopped him cold. Mr. Richardson, we haven't discussed your situation yet. The gambling debts funded through fraudulent consulting fees amount to over $200,000. Your choices mirror your wife's, prison or restitution. Though given your debts to certain unsavory individuals, prison might actually be safer. This is insane! Mom finally found her voice standing shakily. You can't turn your sister into a servant. Whatever she's done, she's still family. There has to be another way. Some compromise that doesn't involve this humiliation. She looked at me pleadingly, still trying to protect her golden child even after seeing the evidence. Where was this concern for family when she had me thrown out of the restaurant? I asked quietly. When she seated me by the kitchen at Cousin's wedding, when she announced to rooms full of people that I was an embarrassment, when she banned me from the building for trying to give you a birthday gift. Where was family then? Dad cleared his throat awkwardly. Those were misunderstandings. Sisters fight. It doesn't mean. He trailed off, unable to finish the defense even he didn't believe. The evidence was too overwhelming, the pattern too clear. Years of excuses were finally failing to cover the truth. Misunderstandings, I repeated. Is that what we're calling systematic cruelty? Interesting. Well, here's something that isn't a misunderstanding. The house you've lived in for 30 years is safe because I paid off the mortgage you took out for her. Your retirement is gone because she stole it. Your future security depends on my generosity, not hers. Aunt Marilyn stood up, her face flushed with decades of suppressed anger. I want my money back, every penny. I don't care if she has to scrub floors for a decade. That was my husband's life insurance, my security. She looked me in the eye and promised returns while stealing from me. I want justice. You'll get it, I assured her. With interest. Everyone will be made whole, but it requires cooperation from those who created this mess. I turned back to Iris. So what's it going to be? 2 years of honest work or several years behind bars? Choose quickly. This offer expires when I walk out that door. I'll sue, Iris suddenly burst out. For defamation, for corporate espionage, for... She struggled to find more legal terms. You can't just take everything from me. I have rights. I built this place. The delusion was almost pitiable. Even faced with absolute defeat, she couldn't accept responsibility. Malcolm stepped forward with a thin smile. Ms. Richardson, I encourage you to seek legal counsel. They'll explain that truth is an absolute defense against defamation. They'll note that all evidence was obtained legally during due diligence. They'll also point out that you built nothing, you simply spent other people's money while the business failed. 2 years, I repeated. You work every shift assigned. You treat every employee with respect. You follow every rule. You attend financial literacy classes. You submit to random audits. You make full restitution. Or we go to trial where you'll lose everything and still owe the money. Your choice. The silence stretched endlessly. Iris looked around the room, desperately searching for allies. Her gaze landed on our parents, but Mom was crying quietly while Dad stared at his hands. The staff she'd terrorized watched with combination of satisfaction and pity. Theodore was calculating his own survival. She was alone, finally experiencing the isolation she'd inflicted on others. What about him? She pointed at Theodore suddenly. He gambled. He stole too. Why should I pay for his crimes? The marriage was apparently another casualty of exposure. Theodore's face hardened as he realized she was throwing him under the bus without hesitation. Don't you dare! You knew everything, you encouraged it. Enough. I cut through their mutual recriminations. Theodore faces his own consequences, his debts, his choices, his restitution. Though I suggest you divorce quickly, Iris. His gambling associates aren't known for patience and community property laws might make you liable for his obligations. The practical advice was more than she deserved, but less than basic humanity required. Chelsea stepped forward hesitantly. If I may, Ms. Richardson, Velma, I don't know if I'm ready for general manager. It's a huge responsibility. What if I fail? The vulnerability in her voice reminded me of my younger self, talented but terrified, capable but conditioned to doubt. Then you'll learn and improve, I said simply. That's what real managers do. They don't pretend perfection while everything crumbles. They acknowledge mistakes, fix problems, and grow stronger. You've already proven you care about this place and these people. That's 90% of leadership right there. More staff members began speaking up, emboldened by the shifting dynamics. Stories poured out of unpaid overtime verbal abuse. Sexual harassment, ignored tips, stolen schedules, manipulated punitively. Each revelation added weight to Iris's crimes. The Emperor hadn't just lost her clothes, she'd been revealed as a tyrant. I need guarantees. Iris finally said, her voice small and defeated. Written guarantees that if I complete the 2 years, the criminal charges go away. That I get a clean slate. That maybe I can have some small ownership stake eventually. Even broken, she was negotiating, trying to salvage something from the wreckage. You get no ownership, I said flatly. You proved you can't be trusted with it. You complete the program, you avoid prison. You get a clean criminal record and job experience. That's more than you offered any employee you fired for getting sick or requesting fair wages. Take it or leave it. This is revenge, Dad said quietly, finally looking directly at me. Pure and simple. You're enjoying this. Destroying your sister because she was more successful, more loved. The accusation should have hurt. Once it would have. Now it just confirmed how little they understood anything. If this were revenge, I replied calmly, I'd have let the restaurant fail, let you lose the house. Let Iris get arrested without warning. Let the staff sue for damages. Instead, I saved the business, protected your home, and offered a path to redemption. That's not revenge, Dad. That's mercy. Mercy? Iris laughed bitterly. You call this mercy? Taking everything I've worked for, reducing me to nothing. The irony was apparently lost on her. She'd reduced me to nothing in her mind for years. Now she was experiencing the reality of starting from scratch, and it terrified her. You're not being reduced to nothing, I corrected. You're being given the chance to build something real, to earn respect instead of demanding it, to understand value instead of assuming it, to become the person you've pretended to be. That's not reduction, that's opportunity. The room fell silent again as everyone processed the magnitude of change. The golden pearl would survive but transformed. The family dynamics were shattered but might eventually heal. The staff had hope for fair treatment. And Iris faced the choice that would define her future prison or pride swallowed in service of redemption. "I need time to think," she said finally. "This is too much, too fast. I need to process." But I was already shaking my head. "You've had years to think, years to make different choices. The offer stands until I walk out that door. Decide now or face the consequences of delay." Theodore made his decision first. "I'll take the deal, whatever you want. I'll work payback everything. Just, please, no police, no publicity. I can't go to prison. I owe too much to too many people." His capitulation was complete fear overriding any remaining pride. Self-preservation had always been his strongest instinct. All eyes turned to Iris, the woman who'd ruled through fear and favoritism, who'd built her identity on being the successful daughter, the golden child, the chosen one. The woman who'd had everything handed to her and squandered it all. The woman who now faced the first real consequence of her life. "Fine," she whispered the word barely audible, then louder with a flash of her old defiance. "Fine, I'll do it. I'll debase myself for your amusement. I'll pretend to be sorry. I'll play your game. But we both know this is just your jealousy finally getting its revenge." I smiled sadly. She still didn't understand. Maybe she never would, but understanding wasn't required, only compliance. "Malcolm will have the contracts ready tomorrow. You'll sign them, submit to all terms, and start your first shift Monday morning. 6 a.m. sharp. Chelsea will train you on opening procedures." With that, I turned to address the room one final time. "To the staff, you'll all receive bonuses equal to your unpaid wages as apology for what you've endured. To the vendors, every debt will be paid with penalty interest. To the family, I'll be establishing a trust to restore what was taken. The Golden Pearl will become what it always should have been, a place of honest work and fair treatment." I gathered my things, preparing to leave. At the door, I paused and looked back at the scene. Iris slumped in defeat. Our parents aged a decade in an hour. Theodore planning his survival. Chelsea still processing her promotion. Staff members whispering excitedly about bonuses and new management. And Malcolm efficiently organizing the legal aftermath. "One more thing," I added. "The name changes. The Golden Pearl dies today. Tomorrow, this becomes the Honest Table, because that's what we're going to build here. Honesty. In our food, our service, our treatment of each other. No more lies, no more theft, no more cruelty disguised as business." With that, I walked out into the evening air, leaving behind the ruins of my sister's empire and the foundations of something better. The nobody daughter had become somebody, not through cruelty or revenge, but through patience, planning, and the radical act of holding people accountable. The golden child's fall was complete. The real work of redemption would begin tomorrow. 6 months later, I stood in the same spot where security had roughly deposited me on the sidewalk, but everything else had changed. The Honest Table's warm light spilled onto the street, illuminating a line of customers waiting patiently for tables on a busy Friday night. Through the windows, I could see efficient service-happy diners, and most surprisingly, Iris carrying a loaded tray with practiced ease. The transformation hadn't been smooth or easy. Her first month was a disaster of broken dishes, wrong orders, and barely suppressed rage. She'd tried every manipulation in her arsenal, from tears to threats, attempting to get special treatment from staff she'd previously terrorized. But Chelsea, empowered by her new role, and my unwavering support, held firm. No shortcuts, no exceptions, no escape from consequences. The breaking point came in week 3 when Iris served a table of her former society friends. I'd watched from the security feed as her face cycled through humiliation, anger, and something approaching understanding when they treated her exactly as she'd once treated servers: dismissive, demanding, demeaning. She'd hidden in the walk-in cooler for 10 minutes after and emerged somehow different. "You planned that," she'd accused me during one of our mandatory weekly meetings. "You made sure they'd be here when I was working." I hadn't actually, but fate sometimes provides its own justice. Did I also plan how they'd treat you? Or is that just how you taught them service workers should be treated? The question had silenced her for the rest of the meeting. Theodore lasted exactly 1 month before disappearing in the night, leaving behind massive debts and a note claiming the pressure was killing him. The divorce papers he'd filed named Iris as the source of all their problems, attempting to shift blame even in his cowardice. His gambling associates came looking twice before apparently writing off the loss. Iris had seemed almost relieved by his abandonment. Our parents struggled most with the reversal. They'd built their identity around having a successful daughter and a disappointing one. Now, forced to recalibrate, they floundered between resentment and recognition. Mom started coming for lunch once a week, sitting quietly in a corner booth watching both her daughters work. Dad took longer, his pride requiring extensive renovation. The moment that shifted everything came during month 4. A new server, nervous on her first day, dropped an entire tray of expensive entrees. The old Iris would have screamed, threatened, probably fired her on the spot. Instead, I watched my sister help clean up, remake the order, and tell the terrified girl about her own disasters when starting. "It gets easier," she said simply. "Just keep showing up." Chelsea pulled me aside that night, tears in her eyes. "She's actually changing. I didn't think it was possible, but she's really trying." The evaluation meant everything coming from someone who'd suffered most under Iris's management. "She's got a long way to go, but there's something human emerging from under all that ego." The restaurant itself thrived under honest management. Food costs dropped when theft stopped. Quality improved when chefs weren't berated into quitting. Customer satisfaction soared when service came with genuine care instead of performed superiority. The books, properly kept for the first time, showed consistent profits. We were even able to hire back some of the staff Iris had driven away. Aunt Marilyn became a regular holding court at Table 12 every Tuesday with her bridge club. She'd forgiven my parents, but not forgotten keeping a careful distance that spoke of trust broken and partially rebuilt. Her investment was being repaid on schedule with interest, each check delivered by Iris personally as part of her restitution process. The financial literacy classes I'd mandated revealed the depth of Iris's ignorance about actual business. She'd genuinely believed that spending money was the same as earning it. That image equaled success, that other people existed to fund her dreams. Week by week, concept by concept reality replaced delusion. The instructor reported she was his most resistant but eventually most dedicated student. Month 5 brought an unexpected development. Iris requested a meeting outside our mandatory sessions. She looked exhausted but somehow more real than I'd ever seen her. "I need to say something," she began, then stopped, struggling with words that didn't come naturally. I was wrong about everything. About you, about the restaurant, about what success means." I waited, having learned that rushing these moments robbed them of impact. She continued haltingly. "I wasted everything. Mom and Dad's money, Aunt Marilyn's trust to the staff's loyalty, your offer to help. I threw it all away for appearance for this image I thought mattered. And the worst part is, I believed my own lies. I actually thought I was better than you. What changed?" I asked, genuinely curious about her transformation. She laughed, but it was bitter rather than mocking. "You want the pathetic truth, it was serving breadsticks to Councilman Morrison. He used to fawn over me, beg for reservations. That night, he snapped his fingers at me like I was a dog, and I realized that's how I'd treated every server for years." Empathy through experience, I observed. Sometimes we can't understand pain until we feel it ourselves. She nodded, tears threatening but held back. I've been horrible to you, not just recently, but always. Even as kids, I needed you to be less so I could be more. I don't know if I can fix that, but I want to try. Acknowledgement is the first step. I told her maintaining boundaries while allowing possibility. But rebuilding trust takes time and consistency. Keep working. Keep growing. Keep choosing differently than before. Maybe something new can emerge from what was broken. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, but it was a beginning. By month 6, Iris had become one of our best servers. She knew every regular's preference, anticipated needs, handled difficult customers with grace born from understanding both sides of the table. Her earnings went entirely to restitution, living on rice and beans in a studio apartment that probably reminded her of the one she'd mocked me for having. The media eventually caught wind of the story, though not in the way Iris had feared. A local business journal ran a feature on the Honest Table as a model for ethical restaurant management. They mentioned the ownership change and redemption program, but focused on the positive transformation. Iris, photographed in her server uniform, was quoted saying, "I'm learning what real work means for the first time in my life." Chelsea had grown into her role magnificently, implementing systems that balanced efficiency with humanity. She'd hired several people who'd been fired from other restaurants for needing flexibility. Single parents, students, people rebuilding after setbacks. The Honest Table became known as a place that gave second chances while maintaining high standards. I kept my office simple, a small space above the restaurant where I could observe without hovering. The walls held no vanity photos or society page clippings, just charts showing employee satisfaction scores and customer feedback. Success measured in substance rather than show. The pearl necklace Mom had rejected now sat in a display case, a reminder of where the journey started. Mom finally accepted the necklace on her 71st birthday. "I was wrong," she said simply, fastening the clasp with shaking hands. "About you, about success, about what matters. I chose easy over right appearance over substance. I failed you as a mother." The apology came too late to heal childhood wounds, but not too late to matter. Dad's acknowledgement came through actions rather than words. He started volunteer teaching basic business skills at the community center, sharing hard-learned lessons about due diligence and looking beyond surface success. He never directly apologized, but he told every class about his daughter's plural and the importance of recognizing different kinds of achievement. Standing there that evening, watching the restaurant buzz with healthy activity, I reflected on the strange journey from humiliation to justice to something approaching reconciliation. The revenge I'd thought I wanted had transformed into something more complex. Not just accountability, but the possibility of redemption. Not just justice, but the chance for growth. Iris emerged from the kitchen carrying a birthday cake for a regular customer. She led the singing with genuine enthusiasm, her face lighter than I'd ever seen it. When she caught my eye, she nodded with something that might have been gratitude, or understanding, or simply acknowledgement of how far we'd both traveled. Chelsea joined me on the sidewalk during a brief break. "You could have destroyed her," she said quietly. "Most people would have. Why offer redemption to someone who never offered you anything but cruelty?" It was the question I'd asked myself throughout the process, especially during the hardest moments. "Because destruction is easy," I replied, watching the warm light spill onto the street. Breaking things requires no skill, no growth, no purpose beyond the moment of impact. Building something better from the ruins, that's the real challenge. That's the real power. Anyone can tear down. It takes strength to lift up even those who tried to keep us down. Plus, I added with a smile that held no bitterness, the best revenge isn't making someone suffer. It's showing them what they could have been all along if they'd chosen differently. It's watching them realize that the nobody they dismissed became the somebody who saved them, not through cruelty, but through the grace they never showed. Chelsea hugged me quickly before returning to work. I remained outside, observing the life inside the restaurant I now owned. The golden child who'd fallen was slowly rebuilding herself through honest work. The parents who'd played favorites were learning to see both daughters clearly. The aunt who'd been deceived was whole again. The staff who'd suffered had found justice and opportunity. As for me, the nobody daughter who'd been thrown out had become somebody. Not through revenge or cruelty, but through patience, purpose, and the radical act of turning pain into purpose. The golden pearl was dead, its gaudy pretension replaced by the honest table's simple truth that real success comes from lifting others up, not stepping on them. I thought about that night 6 months ago when Iris had banned me from what she thought was her kingdom. "We'll see about that," I'd told her. Now we had seen, we'd all seen, and what emerged from the seeing was better than what revenge alone could have built. Sometimes the best response to being called nobody is to become somebody who helps everyone become somebody too. Even those who tried to keep you down, especially them. Because true power isn't in the crushing, but in the constructing. Not in the revenge, but in the redemption. The story that started with humiliation had become one of transformation. The restaurant built on lies had become a foundation for truth. The family torn apart by favoritism was slowly, carefully learning to come together through honesty. And two sisters who'd been positioned as enemies by those who should have loved them equally were finding their way towards something that might eventually become real relationship. That's the thing about revenge. If you do it right, it transforms into justice. If you do justice right, it creates space for redemption. And if redemption takes root, it grows into something far more powerful than the original wrong could ever be. The honest table stood as proof that sometimes the best revenge is showing grace to those who showed you none. But first, always first, they must earn it through the work of becoming better than they were. That's not cruelty. That's the deepest kindness of all. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear about your own experiences with family dynamics and redemption in the comments below. Have you ever had to stand up to a family member who underestimated you? How did you handle it? Share your thoughts, and if you found value in this story of transformation, please like and subscribe to hear more tales of underdogs who rise above. Remember to hit that notification bell so you never miss a story, and share this with someone who needs to hear that being called nobody is just the beginning of becoming somebody amazing. Thank you for joining me on this journey from humiliation to triumph, and remember your worth isn't determined by others' inability to see it.